Listen, I have been scanning hostile environments for the Galactic Council for 73 cycles now. 73. And in all that time, across 412 different planetary systems, I have never, and I mean never, encountered anything quite as bafflingly ridiculous as humans. My designation is Krell 9, Secondary Scout for the Valorian Exploration Fleet, and before you ask, yes, I am qualified for this job. 3 commendations, 2 medals of excellence, and 1 very unfortunate incident involving a plasma core that we do not talk about anymore. The point is, I know what I am doing. I know how to assess threats, calculate survival probabilities, and file the proper reports when a species needs to be classified as dangerous. Humans. They broke my entire classification system. It started on a Tuesday. Well, not a Tuesday exactly, because humans are the only species narcissistic enough to name their planetary rotation periods after ancient deities and random concepts, but you get the idea. I was conducting a routine survey of the outer colonies near the Andromeda border, specifically targeting a mining facility on some forgettable rock called Epsilon 7. The place was supposed to be automated. Empty. A simple scan and move on situation. Except it was not empty. The distress beacon hit my sensors like a punch to my secondary breathing valve. Automated facilities do not send distress beacons unless something has gone catastrophically wrong, and catastrophically wrong usually means either system failure, meteor impact, or hostile invasion. I ran the probabilities. System failure, 42%. Meteor impact, 38%. Hostile invasion, 19%. Random human doing something impossibly stupid, 0.001%. Guess which one it was? I brought my scout ship into a low orbit, activated the stealth shields, and began running deep scans of the facility. The main structure was intact, which ruled out meteors. The power grid was functioning at 67% capacity, which ruled out total system failure. But the life support systems? Oh, those were going haywire. Oxygen levels fluctuating, temperature controls offline, and the environmental processors were spewing error codes like a malfunctioning data terminal. And right in the middle of all that chaos, one human life sign. Just one. Sitting in what appeared to be the central processing hub, heart rate elevated but stable, body temperature slightly above normal range. I should have left. Standard protocol dictates that solo scouts do not engage with unknown situations involving potentially dangerous species. But here is the thing about humans that I did not know yet: they have this absolutely infuriating ability to make you care about them even when every logical circuit in your brain is screaming at you to run. I landed my ship in the facility's docking bay, which was, surprise surprise, completely depressurized. The inner airlock doors were sealed, but the outer ones had been blown clean off their hinges. Something big had forced its way inside, and recently too, judging by the scorch marks and the debris floating in the zero-gravity environment. I armed myself with a standard-issue plasma rifle, not that I expected to use it, and made my way through the wreckage. The facility was a mess. Conduit sparking, panels torn from the walls, and a very suspicious trail of fluorescent green ichor leading deeper into the complex. Ah. So it was a hostile invasion after all. Specifically, judging by the chemical composition of that ichor, a Corthian raid party. 4 of them, maybe 5, which meant this lone human was either already dead or about to wish they were. Corthians are not subtle creatures. They stand roughly 9 feet tall, have exoskeletons that can deflect most small arms fire, and possess a delightful habit of eating their prey while it is still alive. The Galactic Council has been trying to exterminate them for decades, but they breed like parasites and hide in asteroid fields where nobody wants to waste the resources hunting them down. I followed the ichor trail through 3 corridors, 2 maintenance shafts, and 1 very unfortunate cafeteria that I will probably see in my nightmares for the next few cycles. The bodies of the other facility workers were. Well, let us just say the Corthians had not been hungry enough to finish their meals. The trail led me to the central processing hub, where the human life sign was still broadcasting. I readied my rifle, overrode the door controls, and stepped inside expecting to find either a corpse or a cowering survivor. What I found instead was Marcus Vale. He was sitting cross-legged on top of a server bank, casually eating what appeared to be some kind of compressed nutrition bar, while 3 dead Corthians lay in various states of dismemberment around the room. And I do mean dismemberment. One was missing its primary combat arms. Another had a metal support beam driven through its thorax. The third looked like it had been beaten to death with a fire extinguisher, which was lying nearby, dented and covered in that same fluorescent ichor. Marcus looked up at me, chewing slowly, and said, "Oh good, you are not another one of those things. Do you have any hot sauce? Because these ration bars taste like recycled cardboard." I stared at him. My mandibles literally hung open. What, I finally managed to croak out, happened here? He swallowed his mouthful of terrible nutrition bar and gestured vaguely at the carnage surrounding him. Bugs showed up about 6 hours ago. Big ones. Mean ones. They killed everyone in the facility except me, probably because I was down in the lower maintenance tunnels fixing a coolant leak when they breached. By the time I made it back up here, they were ransacking the place looking for survivors. And you killed 3 Corthian raiders, I said slowly, with improvised weapons. 4, actually. He pointed toward a ventilation shaft. There is another one stuck up there. Could not quite fit through the grating, which was hilarious until it started trying to claw its way through. Had to electrocute it with some exposed wiring. I looked at the ventilation shaft. Sure enough, there was a very dead, very crispy Corthian wedged in the opening. "You are insane," I informed him. "Probably," he agreed cheerfully. "But I am also still alive, which I consider a win under the circumstances. So, are you here to rescue me or just judge my life choices? Because if it is the latter, I should warn you that my therapist already has a waiting list." This was my first real conversation with a human, and already I could feel my probability matrices collapsing into recursive loops of confusion. According to every piece of data the Galactic Council had on humans, they were supposed to be a barely spacefaring species, technologically primitive, and physically unremarkable. Emotionally unstable, yes. Prone to violence, absolutely. But not capable of single-handedly wiping out a Corthian raid party using office supplies and sheer spite. "I am conducting a survey," I said, trying to regain some semblance of professional composure. "I detected your distress beacon." "Oh, that. Yeah, I triggered that about 5 hours ago when I realized the bugs had damaged the communications array and I could not call for help the normal way. Figured someone would eventually notice." He hopped down from the server bank and stretched, which made several of his joints produce alarming popping sounds. "So what happens now? Do you file a report, or do I need to fill out some kind of form, or?" "Now," I said firmly, "you are going to explain to me exactly how you survived this encounter, because everything I know about human biology says you should be dead 7 times over." Marcus grinned. It was not a nice grin. It was the kind of grin that predators make right before they pounce. "Sure," he said. "But it is going to take a while, and I am going to need you to understand something important first." "What is that?" "Humans do not die easy." He was not kidding. Over the next hour, as I helped him restore partial life support to the facility and transmitted an emergency signal to the nearest council outpost, Marcus walked me through the entire encounter. And with every word, my respect for human tenacity grew, along with my absolute terror at the implications. The Corthians had breached the facility through the cargo bay, using some kind of makeshift plasma cutter to slice through the outer hull. Standard raid tactics. They moved fast, killed efficiently, and by the time the facility's automated defenses activated, they had already neutralized the security systems. Marcus had been 3 levels down, elbow deep in a malfunctioning coolant pump, when the alarm started blaring. He immediately sealed the maintenance tunnel behind him, which bought him approximately 4 minutes before the Corthians figured out where he was and started cutting through the bulkhead. So I did what any reasonable person would do, he explained while rerouting power to the environmental processors. I grabbed my toolkit, stuffed my pockets with anything that looked potentially useful, and started climbing. Climbing what? I asked. The vertical maintenance shaft. Goes from the bottom level all the way up to the command deck. About 200 meters straight up, no ladder, just service rungs every meter or so. I felt my respiratory systems constrict. You climbed 200 meters while being pursued by Corthian raiders? Well, they were not pursuing me at that point. They were still cutting through the door. But yeah, I figured they would come after me eventually, so I wanted to put some distance between us. He paused, considering. Also, I may have rigged the maintenance tunnel to explode once they got inside. You rigged it to explode. There was a spare plasma core down there. Unstable one too. I just had to crack the containment housing and set a timer. Gave me about 3 minutes to get clear before it went off. And did it work? His grin widened. Killed one of them outright, injured another. Would have been a clean getaway except I was not quite fast enough, and one of the bugs was already climbing up after me. Caught me about halfway up the shaft. I stopped what I was doing and turned to look at him fully. A Corthian caught you in a confined vertical space with no room to maneuver. Yep. How are you not dead? He held up his left arm, which I now noticed had a makeshift bandage wrapped around the forearm. It grabbed me here. Tried to yank me off the wall. But here is the thing about humans that most species do not realize, we have this neat little trick called adrenaline. When we are scared or in pain or really, really angry, our bodies dump this chemical into our bloodstream that basically turns off our limiters. Limiters? Yeah. Under normal circumstances, our brains prevent us from using our full strength because we would tear our own muscles and break our own bones. But when adrenaline kicks in, all bets are off. I felt my arm about to dislocate, realized I had maybe 2 seconds before this thing pulled me into its mandibles, and just did not let go. You held on. I held on. And then I kicked it in what I really hoped was its face until it let go and fell. 200 meters straight down into a very hard floor. By all known laws of biology, this should not have been possible. Humans are not strong enough to resist a Corthian's grip. They are not durable enough to survive that kind of strain on their joints. And they certainly should not have the presence of mind to fight back while hanging from a wall above a lethal drop. But Marcus was standing right in front of me, alive and relatively unharmed, which meant either everything the Galactic Council knew about humans was wrong, or this particular human was some kind of genetic anomaly. Spoiler alert, it was not the latter. After that, he continued, I made it up to the command deck, sealed myself in the central processing hub, and waited. The 3 remaining bugs came looking for me about an hour later. They tried to cut through the door, but I had already rerouted all the facility's remaining power to the locking mechanism. So they decided to get creative. Creative how? They split up. 2 stayed at the main door, trying to brute force it open. The 3rd one went looking for alternate routes. Found the ventilation system. Hence the electrocuted Corthian in the shaft. The other 2 eventually got the door open. By that point, I had armed myself with everything I could find, the fire extinguisher, some metal tools, a couple of support beams I had torn out of the wall. You tore support beams out of the wall. Adrenaline, remember? Anyway, first one through the door got the extinguisher to the face. Kept hitting it until it stopped moving. Second one was smarter, tried to flank me. That is when I used the support beam like a spear and ran it through. He said all of this with the casual tone of someone describing their morning commute, not a desperate life-or-death battle against creatures that regularly slaughter trained soldiers. I finished the power reroute and leaned against a console, trying to process everything. You do realize that what you did is statistically impossible. Yeah, I have heard that before, Marcus said, finally finishing his terrible ration bar. But here is the thing about humans. We do not really care about statistics. We care about surviving. And when you put us in a situation where the only options are fight or die, we will fight using anything we can get our hands on, including staplers if necessary. Staplers? Hey, I have seen it work. Not for me, but I know a guy. The rescue ship arrived 14 hours later. By that point, I had filed 3 separate reports, each more confused than the last, and had spent far too much time watching Marcus repair damaged systems while humming what he claimed were ancient human war songs. They sounded more like rhythmic noise to me, but apparently, humans find them motivating. When the council representatives arrived and saw the state of the facility, they immediately quarantined the entire site and launched a full investigation. They interviewed Marcus for 6 hours straight, trying to understand how a single human had survived what should have been an unsurvivable scenario. His answer: I did not want to die, so I did not. That was it. That was his entire explanation. And somehow, impossibly, that was enough. The investigation lasted 3 weeks, which gave me plenty of time to observe Marcus and his absolutely bewildering approach to survival. The council assigned me as his temporary liaison, mostly because I was the first responder and they needed someone who could translate human sarcasm into something resembling coherent reports. Let me tell you, that job description should have come with hazard pay. During those 3 weeks, I learned more about humans than I ever wanted to know, and somehow still not enough to make sense of them. For instance, did you know that humans require regular sleep cycles but will actively fight against them when they find something interesting? Marcus stayed awake for 48 hours straight helping the investigators reconstruct the attack timeline, fueled by nothing but something called coffee and what he described as pure spite. When I asked him why he did not simply rest, he looked at me like I had suggested he breathe vacuum. Sleep is for people who are not being interrogated by a galactic bureaucracy, he said, downing his 7th cup of the horrific brown liquid. Besides, if I sleep, they might decide I am too traumatized to give accurate testimony and ship me off to some medical facility for observation. No thanks. I have had enough of being poked and prodded by beings who do not understand basic human physiology. He was referring to the medical team that had examined him after the rescue. They had run every test in the council database, trying to find some genetic enhancement or cybernetic modification that explained his survival. They found nothing. Marcus was, by all measurable standards, a completely average human. Average height, average muscle density, average bone structure. The only thing unusual about him was his psychological profile, which the evaluators described as showing a concerning lack of normal fear responses. They keep asking me if I have death wish, Marcus complained during one of our many conversations in the facility cafeteria, which had been cleaned and repaired following the incident. I do not have a death wish. I have a living wish. There is a difference. One involves giving up, the other involves doing whatever it takes to keep breathing for another day. But you engaged 4 Corthian raiders in direct combat, I pointed out, picking at my meal ration. That is objectively suicidal behavior. No, suicidal would have been just sitting there waiting for them to find me. What I did was make the active choice to fight back. Sure, the odds were terrible, but they were better than 0, and 0 is what I would have had if I had done nothing. He leaned back in his chair, which creaked alarmingly under his weight. Human furniture is distressingly fragile. You see, Krell, this is the fundamental difference between humans and most other species. When you all hit a survival situation, you calculate probabilities and make logical decisions based on optimal outcomes. When we hit a survival situation, we throw logic out the airlock and commit ourselves entirely to the irrational belief that we can win. That sounds insane. Oh, it absolutely is. But it works more often than you would think. The investigation concluded that Marcus had acted in legitimate self-defense and that the facility breach was entirely the fault of inadequate security protocols. The mining company was fined heavily, Marcus was compensated generously, and the council updated their threat assessment of Corthian raiders to include warnings about underestimating determined prey species. They also, much to my dismay, flagged humans as a species requiring further study. Which is how I ended up spending the next 6 months shadowing Marcus as he returned to active duty. Not on Epsilon 7, obviously. That facility was permanently shut down after the incident. Instead, the mining company transferred him to a larger operation on a planet called Kepler 442b, which the humans had creatively renamed New Toronto for reasons that made no sense to anyone except other humans. I volunteered for the assignment. My supervisors thought I was being diligent. The truth was, I had become morbidly fascinated by this bizarre species and their apparent ability to survive situations that should kill them. I needed to understand how they did it, because if humans could routinely exceed their biological limitations through sheer willpower, that had massive implications for the Council's threat assessment protocols. Plus, and I will never admit this in any official report, I actually liked Marcus. He was funny, irreverent, and had a talent for making even the most mundane situations entertaining. Working with him was like being constantly surprised by a universe that refused to follow its own rules. New Toronto was a significant upgrade from Epsilon 7. Proper defensive systems, a full security team, regular supply shipments, and actual recreational facilities for the workers. The human population on-site numbered around 300, with another 200 aliens from various Council species. It was one of the more successful integration projects, where multiple species worked together on resource extraction without killing each other. Mostly. Marcus settled into his new role as senior maintenance engineer with the same casual competence he had displayed during the Corthian incident. He fixed broken equipment, optimized power distribution systems, and occasionally prevented catastrophic failures through a combination of technical knowledge and what he called gut instinct. Gut instinct? I asked him one day while we were inspecting a malfunctioning ore processor. You are telling me you make engineering decisions based on feelings? Not feelings exactly, he said, reaching into a tangle of cables and pulling out a corroded connector that should have been replaced months ago. More like pattern recognition mixed with experience. I have fixed enough of these things to know when something sounds wrong or feels wrong, even if the diagnostic systems say everything is fine. Humans are really good at that kind of intuitive problem solving. That is not how engineering works. Sure it is. Your people just do it with math and sensors. We do it with math, sensors, and this weird organic computer in our skulls that specializes in finding patterns in incomplete data. He replaced the connector and sealed the panel. There. That should hold for another few months, assuming nobody overloads the system again. The ore processor hummed back to life, running 30% more efficiently than it had before. I made a note in my report about human intuitive engineering, then immediately deleted it because it sounded ridiculous. Everything was peaceful for about 2 months. And then the pirates showed up. They hit us during a shift change, when half the facility was asleep and the other half was distracted with handover procedures. Smart tactics. The kind of smart that suggested these were not random raiders but organized criminals with inside information. They disabled the communications array first, cutting us off from calling for help. Then they breached the main hangar and stormed the facility with military-grade weapons and armor. 25 hostiles, all heavily armed, demanding that we hand over the months processed or shipment or they would start executing hostages. The security team tried to mount a defense. It lasted approximately 40 seconds before the pirates overwhelmed them with superior firepower. 3 guards dead, 7 wounded, the rest surrendered. The facility commander, a pragmatic Velosian named Torque, made the sensible decision to comply with the demands rather than get everyone killed. Marcus made a different decision. I am not doing this again, he muttered to me as we were herded into the main assembly hall with the other workers. The pirates were separating us into groups, probably planning to use us as leverage if things went wrong with the ore transfer. Doing what again? I whispered back, trying to keep my voice low enough that the nearby guard would not hear us. Sitting around waiting to be rescued or executed or whatever these idiots have planned. I survived 4 Corthians with improvised weapons. I am not about to get shot by discount mercenaries with delusions of competence. Marcus, there are 25 of them. They have military weapons. This is not the same situation. You are absolutely right. This is way easier. How is this easier? He grinned that predator grin again. Because this time, I am not alone. That was when I realized he was not just talking to me. He was making eye contact with other humans in the crowd, using some kind of silent communication method that I still do not fully understand. Apparently, humans can convey complex ideas just by looking at each other in certain ways. Facial expressions, micro-movements, subtle gestures. It is terrifying how much information they can exchange without saying a word. Over the next 10 minutes, while the pirates were busy coordinating the ore transfer, the humans in the facility were coordinating something else entirely. An organized resistance. They passed tools, improvised weapons, and tactical information between themselves using a network of whispered conversations and hand signals that the pirates completely failed to notice. They are not even watching us properly, Marcus observed quietly. These guys are amateurs. Probably pulled off a few successful raids and got overconfident. Big mistake. What are you planning? Nothing complicated. Wait for the ore transfer to begin, which will split their forces between the hangar and the storage facility. Once they are divided, we hit the ones guarding us here, take their weapons, and then work our way through the rest before they realize what is happening. That plan has at least 15 critical failure points. Probably. But again, better than 0. He checked his watch, which was a primitive mechanical device that humans still use despite having access to far more accurate timekeeping technology. Transfer starts in 3 minutes. Get ready to move. I am not a fighter, Marcus. I am a scout. Then scout me a good exit route once this starts, because we are going to need it. Those 3 minutes felt like 3 hours. My respiratory systems were working overtime, my hearts were pounding in syncopated patterns, and my survival instincts were screaming at me to find a way to excuse myself from whatever insanity was about to unfold. But I stayed. Because if Marcus was right, and the humans could actually pull this off, I needed to document it. And if he was wrong, well, at least I would have company in whatever afterlife awaited us. The ore transfer began right on schedule. 12 pirates moved toward the storage facility to oversee the loading process, leaving 13 to guard the hostages. Better odds, but still not good. Marcus waited exactly 30 seconds. Then he stood up. Hey, he called out to the nearest guard, a large insectoid species wielding an energy rifle. I need to use the bathroom. Your boss said something about not wanting hostages to die from easily preventable biological functions. The guard looked annoyed but nodded toward a corridor. Make it quick. Try anything stupid and I will fry you where you stand. Would not dream of it, Marcus said, walking toward the corridor with his hands raised in a gesture of compliance. The moment he was out of the guard's direct line of sight, everything happened at once. Marcus spun, grabbed a metal serving tray from a nearby table, and hurled it at the guard like a discus. It caught the insectoid directly in the visual sensors, momentarily blinding it. Before the guard could recover, Marcus had closed the distance and was wrestling the rifle out of its grip. That was the signal. 20 other humans launched themselves at the remaining guards in a coordinated assault that can only be described as controlled chaos. They used chairs as clubs, table legs as spears, and their own bodies as battering rams. The pirates tried to respond with lethal force, but they were caught completely off guard by the sudden aggression. I scrambled for cover behind an overturned table as energy bolts started flying in every direction. This was not tactical combat. This was a brawl, raw and brutal and absolutely terrifying to witness. Humans were taking hits that should have incapacitated them and just kept fighting. One woman got shot in the shoulder and responded by breaking a chair over her attacker's head. A man took a glancing blow to the ribs and used the momentum to tackle his opponent into a wall. And Marcus? Marcus was in the center of it all, having successfully claimed the energy rifle and was now using it with alarming proficiency. He moved like someone who had done this before, covering his fellow humans as they overwhelmed the guards one by one. The entire fight lasted less than 2 minutes. When it was over, 13 pirates lay unconscious or dead. The humans had claimed enough weapons to arm themselves properly, and Marcus was already organizing them into tactical squads to deal with the remaining hostiles in the storage facility. Group 1, you are with me. We go through the main corridor and hit them from the front. Group 2, take the maintenance tunnels and flank them from the east side. Group 3, secure the hangar and make sure none of them try to escape to their ships. Everyone understand? They nodded. No arguments, no hesitation. They just accepted that this human, who had been a maintenance engineer 5 minutes ago, was now their de facto military commander. Krell, Marcus said, turning to me. You are with Group 1. I need you to hack their communications once we engage. Jam their signals so they cannot coordinate. I can do that, I said, surprised at how steady my voice sounded despite my internal panic. Good. Let us go ruin these idiots' day. The assault on the storage facility was somehow even more chaotic than the initial fight. The pirates had fortified positions, better cover, and more experience with actual combat situations. None of it mattered. The humans hit them like a natural disaster, overwhelming them through sheer aggressive momentum. I did my part, hacking into the pirate communication network and flooding it with interference. It was not sophisticated work, but it was effective. The pirates could not coordinate their defense, could not call for reinforcements, could not warn their ship crews that things had gone catastrophically wrong. By the time the facility security systems were restored and proper authorities were summoned, the entire pirate crew had been neutralized. Some were dead, most were unconscious, all were in absolutely no condition to threaten anyone ever again. The official casualty report showed 12 humans injured, none critically. 0 human fatalities. The pirates had not been nearly as fortunate. The council investigation that followed was even more extensive than the one after the Corthian incident. They wanted to understand how a group of civilian workers had successfully repelled a professional pirate crew. They interviewed everyone, reviewed all available footage, and ran countless simulations trying to recreate the battle. Their conclusion? Humans possess an unprecedented capacity for coordinated violence when threatened. They can transform from peaceful workers to effective combat units in seconds, using minimal communication and improvised tactics. They do not require formal military training to fight effectively. They just require motivation and a target. The report also noted, with what I interpreted as poorly concealed alarm, that humans become significantly more dangerous when working together. Their individual capabilities multiply rather than add when operating as a group. Marcus, for his part, was completely unimpressed by all the attention. We just did what needed to be done, he told the investigators. Those pirates made the mistake of assuming we would roll over and let them take what they wanted. We proved them wrong. End of story. But you had no formal combat training, one investigator pressed. How did you know how to organize an effective resistance? I watch a lot of movies. Plus, humans have been fighting each other for our entire evolutionary history. It is kind of our thing. We are really, really good at violence when we need to be. That was when I realized the truth that would shape the rest of my career with the Galactic Council. Humans were not just good at surviving. They were good at winning. They could take impossible situations and somehow turn them into victories through a combination of aggression, creativity, and an absolute refusal to accept defeat. They were not the strongest species in the galaxy. They were not the smartest, or the fastest, or the most technologically advanced. But they were the most stubborn, and in survival situations, stubbornness often matters more than any other attribute. 6 months after the pirate incident, I submitted my final report to the council. It was 300 pages long, filled with detailed observations, psychological profiles, and tactical assessments. The core conclusion was simple: humans should be classified as a Tier 1 survival species, capable of adapting to and overcoming threats far beyond their apparent biological limitations. The council accepted my recommendations and updated their databases accordingly. Humans were officially recognized as a species of significant interest, and several research initiatives were launched to better understand their capabilities. Marcus, meanwhile, got promoted to Facility Security Director and spent his time training other species in what he called human-style tactical thinking. His classes were enormously popular, though I suspect most attendees came more for the entertainment value than actual education. I still work with him occasionally when my scouting duties bring me to New Toronto. We have become what humans call friends, which apparently involves a lot of sarcastic commentary and the sharing of terrible beverages. You know what the funny thing is? Marcus said to me during one of my visits, while we were watching the sunset from the observation deck. Everyone keeps treating me like I am special, like I did something extraordinary. But I am not. I am just a guy who did not want to die. Any human would have done the same thing in my position. That is what makes it extraordinary, I replied. Most species would have given up. You did not. He shrugged. We do not really have a word in our language for giving up when survival is on the line. I mean, we have the phrase, but we do not really mean it. Humans do not quit. We adapt, we improvise, we overcome. It is just how we are built. That is what terrifies the Council. Good. Let them be terrified. Maybe they will think twice before underestimating us again. He grinned. Besides, being terrifying has its advantages. Nobody messes with humans anymore. We have a reputation now. He was right about that. In the years since the incidents, pirate attacks on human facilities had dropped to almost zero. The word had spread through the criminal networks, do not target humans. They fight back, and they fight dirty, and they will absolutely ruin your day if you give them half a chance. Marcus Vale survived an encounter that redefined how the entire galaxy viewed human limits. But more than that, he proved something fundamental about his species. They are not just survivors. They are fighters, adaptable and relentless and utterly unwilling to accept defeat. And that, more than anything else, is what makes them so incredibly dangerous and so incredibly valuable as allies. I filed my final supplementary report 3 days later. It contained just one additional observation: never, under any circumstances, back a human into a corner. Because when you do, you are not fighting one human. You are fighting the collective stubbornness of an entire species that clawed its way to the top of its planetary food chain through sheer determination. Marcus read the report and laughed. You make us sound way more impressive than we actually are. But he was wrong. If anything, I had understated the case. Because humans do not just survive impossible situations. They thrive in them. And in a galaxy full of logical, calculating species that know when to surrender, that makes them the most dangerous species of all.